I was beating myself up to death. I was like kind of almost like a little bit like anxious, a little bit almost depressed. And I'll tell you how crazy this is. It's because I was doubting myself of whether I'll ever become a billionaire or not. And it's because I have friends that are billionaires, right? I know a couple billionaires, and like I compare myself to them. And I'm like, I'm a loser. Like it's like crazy what your mind can do. And then I step back and I'm like, what am I doing? Like think of the conversation we just had a couple minutes ago. Like I feel like I'm there, right? Like in comparison to most people, people would be like, this guy's got the dream life, right? Well, I'm sitting there talking to myself, what a loser I am. It's like, it's all, it's all in your head.
Welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. You are in for another treat today with Jason Smith. And I will tell you, this conversation is one that is really important to me because Jason invited myself, my wife, my son James into his home. I wouldn't even call it a home. I even say this in an episode. It's kind of like more like a ranch, maybe a farm. It's like a 60-acre plantation. And he is just such an awesome human being. His wife, his kids, just an unbelievable story that he has gone through. So I highly recommend you to follow Jason Smith's work. He has the Rainmaker Multiplier podcast. I had the privilege of being a guest on that show, and here's an impressive stat. He has gathered over $90 million in assets, in new assets, in the last 12 months, only working 1 day per week. So I just want to put that in perspective. This is a gentleman we could talk about in this episode where he talks about, am I going to be a billionaire sometime in the next few years? And it's like, this is the pressure tension relationship that he's having about where he's at in life. It's just, he's so humble, yet so hungry. His book called The Bucket Plan has been featured over the last several years in all different awards. It's received all different awards and financial services. In fact, what's one of the cool things about Jason is he has two different businesses. One is financial services, and then one is teaching people how to rock financial services. Both of those businesses received Ohio's top business award that you can get inside of Ohio. I found that out after we recorded this episode, but it just goes to show you about Jason's leadership, his mentorship, and his ability to run exceptional businesses, not just one, but two different businesses, one in financial services and one in teaching how to become a successful financial professional. So really excited about this conversation. I hope you are too. Get ready for a great one with Mr. Jason Smith.
So welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm Mike Abramowitz here with Andrew Biggs, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. Jason Smith on the podcast. How are you today, sir?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Well, I grabbed my journal, June 18th, 2023. Here's what it says. My sleep score last night was a little low because I stayed up late hanging out with Jason, but man, it was worth it. So I am saying, listener, you are in for a treat here because Jason, I loved our very brief time with you, but Lindsay and James had us over at your house. I wouldn't even call it a house. I would call it a farm. I would call it a ranch, an estate maybe. It is something that I think everyone should just try to get invited to Jason's house. I mean, it was just so beautiful. The hospitality was great. The steak was delicious. But here's what was so impactful for me to see is you got 4 kids, 2 sets of twins, right? And I was going to try to remember their names.
5 kids total, but yes, 2 sets
5 kids
twins.
total. The 4 that we met.
Right.
And they were just so much fun. And to watch you in your element as a dad, knowing what I know, that you have a business that does 40 million a year, another business that's doing like 7-8 million a year, and you're at home hanging out, kids running around the farm, crushing life. Like, I would never know how amazing your life is if I didn't experience it. So I just want to start for the listener listening right now. I'd love for you to just jam on what is it like being a dad? What is it like being a dad, like a family man with a business versus a businessman with a family? You, where you're at in this chapter of life, I want you to just riff on how fun it is. Like you arrived, in my opinion, like you've already crushed it. You crushed it in business. You crushed it as a family. You've crushed it so many different things. Can you peel back? Like, what does our listener get to experience when they get to a point where it's like, all right, I've checked a lot of the boxes in my life.
Um, Man, I'm telling you what, you're just like, right when you're saying this out loud, you're reminding me of, so I'm in this, one of my favorite books, and sorry, I'm jumping ahead. You made me think of it, Andrew, but you were talking about, I'm going to ask you about your favorite books, but this book called the 15 Commitments to Conscious Leadership, it's probably one of the most impactful pieces that I've ever come across, and I study it on a regular basis, like a preacher studies the Bible. I mean, no joke, right? And I even put together a group of CEOs that we read a new commitment. We just keep going through the 15 and keep over and over recycling. And we read a commitment or listen to it on audiobook. And then we get together and we talk about how we applied that commitment or how we didn't apply that commitment, what we learned, and how we're going to get better next time. And then we move on to the next commitment. We meet every 2 weeks. So I just met a couple days ago on commitment number 11. And what commitment 11 is basically sourcing approval and security. And, you know, it really got me thinking about, one of the things they said is, you know, what if I already have it now? Like, what if I've already like hitting that experience of almost like bliss, right? Of like everything is perfect now, right? And the funny thing is I was meditating the next morning and it was like I just came to this realization is like I'm there, right? And yet I'm always in my own head thinking of the next thing and the next bigger thing and more I want to accomplish in business and with my family and on the farm. But it's like the reality of it is I'm blessed and I'm very fortunate that things are like all kind of come together now, right? Like we're living on a farm, we're eating primarily all the food and the milk and the honey and the vegetables and fruits and everything we're sourcing here locally, non-GMO, organic. I'm teaching the kids lessons. Just they're going to Acton Academy, which I found, or was exposed through Front Row Dads actually, which was awesome. And my businesses are on autopilot. They're successfully with or without me. I bring value, but without my value, those businesses I would argue, would be just as successful. So I'm grateful for the businesses to provide me with an outlet to be creative and feel like I'm valued, because I know that those businesses would be just as successful if I wasn't part of them. And so like just to be in that place financially, spiritually, health wise, kind of everything's clicking on all cylinders. Now, with all that being said, the last 2 days, I was almost like, like I was like, you guys have young kids. You guys have well, I know you do, Mike, Andrew, like twin 6 year olds, twin 8 year olds. At times, I'm like last night I was at a breaking point, right? Like I had to like do every type of, I had to talk to God. I had to talk to Jesus. I had to talk to Buddha. No, I'm just kidding. But like everything in my power of meditation and calmness and saying my mantra in my head to bring myself to a place to not completely lose my mind. So, there's always that, right? It was like, with the young kids.
Yeah, and it's thank you for giving us the window into that, Jason. And by the way, I'm a big fan of that book as well. One of my favorite lessons is the above the line or below the line lesson, and just always asking myself, like, where am I at right now? Am I above the line, or have I dipped below? And listener, if you haven't checked out that book, do check it out. But it's so funny, right? Because it's like, no matter how far you get, life is always going to give you challenges, and is what I'm also hearing. And it's beautiful to watch you arrive, quote unquote, in so many ways. And yes, does that mean probably you're a little less stressed than our average listener? Are you a little bit further along? Are you a little bit more fulfilled? Are you experiencing these things, and maybe not just a little, maybe a lot, right? And also, how much of life is a mountain with no top, right? That we continue to climb and continue to get these lessons, like life presenting you with twin 6-year-olds and twin 8-year-olds, and trying to navigate what that looks like inside your home. I just think it's beautiful, man. What would you say to
And
somebody
Andrew,
who's
I mean, I will
yeah,
share
go
with
ahead.
you. I think it's relevant to what you're saying right now. Like, this lesson came to me, this commitment 11 in this 15 commitments book came to me in such a great time, because I'll be just vulnerable and honest with you. Leading up to that commitment, I was beating myself up to death. I was like kind of almost like a little bit like anxious, a little bit almost depressed. And I'll tell you how crazy this is. It's because I was doubting myself of whether I'll ever become a billionaire or not. But I was literally making myself nervous, anxious, kind of frustrated, disappointment, self negative talk. And it's because I have friends that are billionaires, right? I know a couple billionaires, and I'm like, I compare myself to them. And I'm like, I'm a loser. Like, it's like crazy what your mind can do. And like, if you don't train it and keep it on track. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate of like, continuing to feed yourself, like with this book and these lessons, and having the discipline every 2 weeks to keep revisiting it, and meditating every day, and journaling, and all these things, because I go sideways, and then I step back, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, think of the conversation we just had a couple minutes ago. Like, I feel like I'm there, right? Like, in comparison to most people would be like, this guy's got the dream life, right? Well, I'm sitting there talking to myself, what a loser I am. It's like, it's all in your head, and you got to manage it.
It's so true. And it's like, how much do we move the goalposts in life, right? And how uh, the truth is, how the lives that we're living right now oftentimes were the lives that we dreamed of 3-5 years ago, right? And now we're here and we're dissatisfied. So I just love that sort of wisdom that you're bringing right off the bat. I really appreciate that. What would you say to somebody who's on the journey to trying to arrive, right? You're somebody who's obviously built successful businesses and done really well for yourself, but someone who doesn't feel like they've arrived quite yet. Certainly, I can relate to that, feeling that, and also in many ways I have arrived, in many ways I haven't. But it's like I don't feel like I'm necessarily in that full financial freedom position yet. So I'm still striving on a regular basis. What would you say to somebody like myself, like a listener who can relate to that? As somebody who's on the other side, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I think we're all on the other side, and that's the moral of this lesson, is like, it's your mindset, and it's whether you're living in the past, you're living in the present, or you're living in the future in your own mind, right? Like, for me, I was living in the future leading up to getting reset with commitment 11, right? Of like, wow, I'm here now. I brought myself into the present, and I started to reflect back through what I've accomplished, right? What I've gained, what, like, the successes I've had. Dan Sullivan, who's been my coach for 16 years, right? A strategic coach, he talks about this concept of the gap, right? And like, you're measuring yourself against the ideal instead of measuring what you've accomplished, right? The gain that you've made. And so, I think that's honestly mindset is the number one most important thing. And I think like meditation and journaling and setting written goals, like, I mean, setting a yearly goals and then quarterly goals that tie to those yearly and then weekly goals that keep you focused on those quarterly goals and like just developing rhythms, developing an atomic habits, right? It's another favorite book. I'm totally screwing you up, Andrew. You're going to ask me at the end. I'm just like blurring them out, right? But atomic habits is another one because it's like, what you want to accomplish. Now you just have to think about it in micro steps and make it as easy as possible and automate it to make sure those things happen. For me, my biggest villain is my own mind, right? And so I have to manage my mindset. How do I manage my mindset? It's the discipline of learning by listening and reading and continuing to feed my mind, but then also bringing myself into the present with meditation and journaling. I mean, it's the stuff that you probably hear on everybody you have on this podcast, but the reality of it is that's what it is for me. That's how you get there. It's managing a positive attitude and mindset because you're going to attract the right energy into your life, the right people in your life. They say that thing about like you're most like the 10 people that you spend the most time with, right? It's like if you think of a room, right? It's the 10 people in your room that you spend the bulk of your time with. It's who you're going to talk like, it's who you're going to look like, it's who you're going to act like, it's who you're going to grow. And so just being very intentional about who's in your room, right? Who's in your room that you're spending the most time with, that you're listening to their voice, you're reading their words, you're having conversations with them if you're blessed enough to do that with those people as well. So yeah, that was
Well,
probably longer
it's
than you were looking for.
no, it's perfect, Jason. And I just want to jump in here because, what you're talking about is it's like, I know what to do, but am I doing what I know? And I think a lot of people could nod their head and say, oh, okay, I know Dan Sullivan's work, the gap and the gain. And as you were talking about, it's like, yeah, I know, let me focus on my gains and not be distracted by the gaps and whatnot. But I want to get into the practical because you're someone who took these concepts and said, yes, I'm going to journal, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to read, but then you put them into practice. You shared with me your story and you could go in with any direction you want with your story, but I want to capture it here because you built your business as in wealth management and said, I'm going to provide really great service as an advisor. And I'm going to do it so well that eventually I can build a second business where people want to pay me to learn how to build a business as a very successful wealth advisor. And that's kind of what we did with Better Than Rich too, where it's like, I'm going to implement business systems in my direct sales business, but I'm going to do it so well that people want to pay me to learn how to build business systems in their other industries and their other businesses. And that's kind of what we did, but you've done it at such a global, beautiful, large scale level that I would love for you to just take that down and say, okay, I read, I journal, I meditate, I got it. I got myself, I got things locked and loaded. But here's how I brought that into my first business as a wealth advisor. Here's how I grew that from being just a solo wealth advisor into having a team and building this company. And then taking that into now I've built this other 8-figure company to teach people how to do what I've already done. And now all of these businesses that are producing millions of dollars in revenue are all working without me. I want to unpack that because there are so many golden nuggets that you can share here. And selfishly, I'm going to be over here taking notes and just picking your brain. But listener, get ready. I can't wait to hear what's about to come through on this thread here.
Yeah. So Mike, for me, I guess the first thing is I found something that nobody else, I didn't see many other people doing, and I decided that's what I'm going to do. Right? Like there was a kind of an unfulfilled need in the marketplace that I identified. And I said, this is how I can really differentiate yourself, or myself, to grow my business. So and this happened in my early to mid 20s. I started out on the insurance side, and then I got my investment license. But even before that, I started learning estate planning and more kind of those type of techniques. But so what I saw out there, though, is in my industry, you had your financial guys selling their stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. You had your insurance guys selling your life insurance and annuities. You had your CPAs selling tax returns and accounting services. And you had the attorneys selling trusts and wills and legal services. But ultimately, they were all working in silos, and sometimes even contradicting or competing with one another. And it left the consumer confused and in many cases not getting what I call today holistic wealth management, tying together financial, tax, legal, insurance, all into one comprehensive and holistic plan. Because you make a mistake one place, the other one gets affected, and so on. So early on, I saw this happening and I decided, hey, I'm going to be that one. And I knew this existed for ultra high net worth, like 20, 30 million plus. It's called the family office, right? Like that's what happens. They start a family office, they hire a full-time employee that's like a CFO type of, and they coordinate everything and they make sure the attorney and the CPA and everybody's all coordinated. But everybody else, small business owners, people that are like, maybe work hard, save money. Maybe they're even millionaires, but they're like middle class millionaires, right? They're like hardworking people that saved or accumulated, busted their ass for the money, but they're not ultra high net worth. And they're just getting sold by a bunch of different salespeople. And it's like, oh, I get like they don't coordinate and they compete against the others. So I started doing that in my early mid 20s, got the licenses, designations, education. I've always been an avid reader and learner, and figured out how to quarterback and pull all those services together. And I was killing, like in my mid 20s, making $600,000 a year. I had a I had a $500 a month. So I'll fast forward to like 28, 29, and wherever I was, 600 grand plus of income. And I had a storefront I was renting for like $500 a month, and I had a part-time assistant helping with paperwork, right? And I was just doing what I'm describing to you, coordinating all together, bringing in the attorney, the CPA, bringing in investments, insurance, giving them a family office experience with, but just me doing it, right? Kind of coordinating it. And I was playing in a basketball league, and I came back from the league one night, and I remember sitting back in my lazy boy chair, turning the TV on, and I'm like, my heart is something's wrong with it. It's like skipping beats and beating real fast, then real slow. Long story short, I am emergency room. I'm diagnosed with a rare heart condition that eventually is going to require life-threatening, complicated open heart surgery. And I have a beautiful wife and a young daughter. This is my oldest daughter. And it hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm the son of an insurance guy. I'm the shoemaker's kid. I have no life insurance, right? Like literally like made the mistake of thinking I was invincible, didn't have my own shit in order, didn't have a life insurance. And I knew if I got to go to surgery, I die on an operating table, my income dies with me, my wife and daughter are screwed. And it was like, whoa, right? Like just getting hit with a ton of bricks. And so at that point, I realized like, okay, I'm obviously have something special here that I'm doing, this holistic wealth management approach. And now what I got to figure out how to do is I got to turn this into a machine that produces revenue that is not dependent on me, right? I need to figure out how to take this and turn it into something that can create revenue for my wife and daughter. If God forbid I don't make it through this surgery. And because it was a number of years of monitoring this, that, and the other, well, I won't bore you with the details before I ended up having to have the surgery. And great, I mean, greatest, health I've been in now. So, but that's what spurred me to decide to do it. And at that point, I went nuts, man. I joined Strategic Coach. I joined Michael Gerber's E-Myth coaching program. I hired Patrick Lencioni's Table Group consulting program. I like literally just went all in on every book, every consulting program, multiple coaches teaching me how to build a business that could be self-managing or self-sustaining. And that's what I did, and so I named my process, called it the bucket plan, and then just started building because it's all around the simplification of three buckets now, soon, and later, and how to position your assets and make decisions in those three kind of time periods. It's like time segmenting your money based on the purpose and the time horizon. But the thing is when I went all in, guys, and I did this and I joined all these programs, I started documenting everything in processes and systems. Everything was like, I even hired instructional designers that eventually were full time on staff to build processes, systems, like academic style, course curriculum and e-learning modules. So my employees, my advisors would do it exactly the way that I wanted them to do. Scripts, checklists, everything else as I grew. Well, I didn't realize what also happened. Now all of a sudden I'm getting speaking engagements. Now all of a sudden other advisors that aren't with me, just like other advisors that see me speak, one like, hey, can you show me how to do that? So very accidentally, I started out this kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I can help you. Well, it'll be X amount of dollars. And then before you know it, we decided, hey, let's start up an investment management firm that can support all these advisors and an insurance brokerage firm that can support all these advisors. And that was 12 years ago. But I mean, I got to say that I had some big master plan in my head, but I didn't. It was very accidental and driven by the fact that I was scared and I didn't want my wife and daughter to be, left, in a bad place. And so I just got real serious about processes and systems and getting the right people in place. And it blew up my individual wealth management firm in a positive way, right? Like it really grew exponentially. But then all of a sudden, my side hustle of coaching and helping other advisors ended up being 5 times the size of my wealth management firm.
Well, I love the story, Jason, and thanks for taking us on that journey. And it's good to hear that you've come through that and had the wake up call that you needed to have. And it's also just like you're so much like speaking our language right now around putting in process and SOPs and playbooks and procedures and if thens, except whens, and scripts and all of that sort of infrastructure, right? Because that's what we do for a living is we advise on that. And I also love the story of like Qasim on our one of our previous podcasts. He talks about the corridor effect, and it's like you don't really know what the market needs until you're in there. And so you were there just building what the market needed with this unique brand differentiation, right? You differentiated yourself with this holistic strategy. And then you were able to get in there and see what else did they need and just add, complementary services, right? Is really what happened. And so it's just honestly a great case study for any entrepreneur who's like, how do I build a, $100 million business or something? Well, you start with one thing, do it really well in a differentiated way, and then ask yourself what other, verticals could I go into is kind of what I'm sensing there. So I love that. I'd love to hear you talk about what you learned.
I want to add a comment too of a mistake that I think I see a lot of entrepreneurs make. What I see, like for me, I know my business, right? I know my core business, holistic wealth management, and everything I do is connected or has something to do with that business, right? When I add on, coaching, it's on how to do holistic wealth management or in training. And when I add, or how to build a holistic wealth management practice, right? Or, by the way, like we know we need insurance products in that. Well, we started an insurance brokerage firm because we knew the right insurance products that were in the best interest of the client. And then, of course, we use investments. Well, we started an investment management firm because we wanted the best investments for our clients. But it's like all these additional add ons were just branches of the tree that was already planted and growing, right? Like I think I see a lot of entrepreneurs go out there and they try to start over a new business that they have no experience in, no knowledge in. And listen, some people pull it off and they're way smarter than me. But like for me, the only reason I feel like I had success is I already knew this business and I was able to just expand upon, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like it's just, yeah, they're different businesses, but they're also really just almost like different divisions of the same business that I already knew inside and out.
Yeah, I love that. It's just, if you're an entrepreneur, ask yourself, okay, I already have a tree that's planted. What's working? What's growing? What could I offer in addition? Right? We offer the coaching services, and then we actually started a virtual assistant company, which at this point, it's almost like 50-50. It might even have surpassed some of the revenue we make on coaching because, there's such high demand there. And then, now we're offering social media management. Now we're offering podcast production. It's like, these are all, because that's what our audience needs. And so it's like, what
they're all interrelated.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I love that. And listener, take that to the bank, because if you implement this in your business, it will go a long way. I would love to get some of your how-tos, Jason. You're like, oh yeah, I hired all these people, right? I consulted with the top tier people and brought them in and got all their wisdom, and I went to work implementing these systems. I'm sure that had to be a learning process too. I'm sure that had to be a journey to implement these processes and to begin to hand over things to other people, to begin to increase your kind of operational excellence, your operational efficiency. Take us on that journey. And what are some of your best how-to nuggets that you'd love to tell a fellow entrepreneur right now about scaling through systems?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I want to share, like when you started asking me that, it made me think of another book. I keep being like, oh, I want to talk about another book. He already told me he's going to ask me about it.
You'll come up with three more for the end. You know how it works,
Yeah,
man. You're good. They're like, let it rip.
Yeah. But Firms of Endearment was something that really impacted me a lot when I was at a little bit of a turning point when I kind of realized that, hey, I have built my practice to a level that if something happens to me, and this is before the two sets of twins, this is my wife and my first daughter, who's 26 now, it's hard to believe, which is fun. She started working for the company too, which is neat. So if you're a financial advisor, you might get cold called by Jordan Smith because she's starting out in the trenches. She's cold called. But anyways, this when I felt like I kind of was like, hey, I know these guys are taken care of. Like I'm not so worried about that anymore. I started to kind of reach internally more and be like, what's my real why though? Like now that I know they're taken care of, that was my why. That why is kind of not my why anymore. Like, what is my why? And oh boy, I got a visitor. But I'll see your new haircut in a minute. That's my 6-year-old. So anyway,
I
we've been
love
growing
it.
his hair. He just got it cut for the first time in a year today. So anyway, I start getting into my own personal why. And I started looking at this holistic wealth management thing. And the fact that most other people aren't doing this and most people aren't getting this. And I was like, man, this is a bigger opportunity for me to make a bigger difference by teaching this to other advisors all across the country, and for them to provide this experience to other people that need it and don't even realize maybe they're getting served by a bunch of salespeople, these other professionals working in silos. And that became very motivating for me. And that was like, because at the end of the day, like, it's the with them, right? What's in it for me? I think yeah, I was driven at that point to take care of my daughter, my wife and daughter for a certain point. But then for me to like rally a lot of people behind me, right? Like to motivate and inspire, thousands of people, right? Which is, at this point, there's thousands of like advisors that are following this, the bucket plan and the process that we teach. But it was like a lot of them are like kind of like do I, what's in it for me? First of all, that's what the advisors are always looking for, and the employees and everybody else. But then also, it's like, is there a bigger purpose behind? Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I doing business or doing something with Jason Smith just to like, okay, so he's going to become real successful, but like, is there a bigger purpose behind this? And for me, there really was. It's like simplifying, holistic wealth management for as many people as I can in this country. And so I remember I went to, you guys, have you heard of Peter Diamandis? So, yeah, you know who he is. So I was part of his original group, Abundance 360. And I think there was like 80 of us in the room when it first started. I mean, it's huge now. And I remember being in there, and the co-founder of Google was in there, and Richard Branson was in there, and the Uber founder was in there. Like, it was crazy. There were 4 billionaires in the room, and everybody else was worth, who knows, ungodly amounts of hundreds of millions. I had no, like, the only reason I was in that room is because Dan Sullivan invited me to go, and he was, going and kicking this thing off with Peter. But I remember sitting in that room, and the co-founder of Google, got up there and gave like a little bit of a TED talk, and he was like, you know, he talked about a massive transformative purpose. And he talked about, an MTP, and he's like, he talked about Google. And before Google started, they sat down, and when they were creating, kind of like, just had this vision of Google, they wrote down their MTP, and it was it was to organize the world's information. And that's it, to organize the world's information. That's what they wanted to do. And I mean, they did it, right? But some of the things he said is he's like, listen, if you're going to do something really special in the world, it's got to be able to affect 1 billion people. It's got to be able to make a positive influence on 1 billion people. It also has to be like something, again, a positive influence, right? But then it also has to have like a toothbrush effect, meaning that somebody would use it every day, right? Like somebody would literally use that service or that product like every day. And it really got me thinking, because at that point, yeah, I was offering this holistic wealth management, but by no means is that simple, tying tax, financial, legal, insurance into one holistic plan. But at that point, I was, ironically enough, I was like, when I would explain this whole time segmenting thing, what I call buckets today, it was boxes. And I used to draw 3 boxes. And above the boxes, I'd write now in the first box, and soon above the second box, and later above the third. And I would write their accounts, and I'd write their goals inside of these boxes. But then whatever money they had, I'd write it at the top of the box. And for whatever reason, one day I was meeting with some clients, and I totaled up the amount that they had in the now box and the soon box and later box. I put the totals at the top, and I circled the totals. And the guy, and his name was Glenn, the guy said to me, he's like, Jason, those look like buckets. And he's like, I've always had a bucket list, but I've never had a bucket plan. I'm like, no way. So I'm like, the bucket plan, right? So then, yeah, exactly. So we go and we trademark it and all this, the bucket plan, and then started building the processes. But then it was like, and this is the super long version. I apologize, Andrew, of what the question you asked me is like, what did I do? Well, number one, though, is I really do think to inspire and lead people, you have to be purpose driven. And that's what firms endearment talks about. And, you got to take care of everybody involved, right? And so, but you got to inspire and lead people, you have to have a purpose. And for me, what it evolved into with these three buckets and what our MPT is at C2P, which stands for Clarity to Prosperity, is we want to simplify financial planning for 1 billion people worldwide. So, like, listen, we're not going to have 1 billion clients, but if we can expose 1 billion human beings worldwide over the lifetime of the company, which is probably when my grandkids are running it, when I'm dead and gone. But if we can expose people and teach them how to simplify holistic wealth management with these three buckets of now, soon, and later, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or you're a tribesman in Africa just trying to figure out how much resources and food you need to allocate now, soon, and later, you're still simplifying, right? And so that's our goal. Like, and I'm telling you, I've had a lot of very successful business owner, financial advisors that have joined us because of the purpose, because of the mission of the company, not just because of the processes and systems that we can teach them. Now, don't get me wrong, most of them, they're looking for the processes, right? And so like at the end of the day, if you're doing something really good, document it, trademark it, name it, make it look really cool and special, right? Stand out from the crowd, and then build processes and systems and workflows and SOPs and procedure manuals. Build a playbook on it so it's teachable, scalable, repeatable, right? So it can keep it like Starbucks, right? Like you go to Starbucks and it doesn't matter. They'll customize your order, but you get pretty much the same experience and an unbelievable level of customer experience every time. And so that's how do you do that? You get the right people in place. How do you get the right people in place? You inspire them and you lead them with purpose by having a deeper purpose that they want to be part of. They don't want to be part of just making you rich. They want to be part of doing something to make the world a better place, especially younger people. Is what I'm finding more resonates with people in their 20s and 30s. They want to be part of something special. They want to make a difference in the world. But in order to really have a successful business and scale up, you have to have processes. And that's how you're going to make the people better. And that's how you're going to make your business more profitable.
Well, love the passionate rant, Jason. I also want to say that's exciting about Jordan, because I know when you and I spoke in June, she was out in California or something like that, doing her own thing. And it's like, how could we get her to the family business? So nice work on Jordan navigating over. And one of the things that I loved about your book, by the way, listener, check it out, Bucket Plan. I got it on Amazon. I devoured it in one sit. So it's really, it's a very easy read because it's written like a story. And it's a really a very simple read, but profound in the sense of, like you said, just the three buckets. But one of the things that I wanted to pick apart real quick, and then we could kind of start going in any other direction and respect your time. But I think I want to capture is the way you created the asset sheet in the initial phase. Okay, fill out this assessment. And you fill out this assessment. I have a conversation with you about the assessment. We look at your assessment. We look at your conversation, and it seems as if you made it so simple with this like assessment, like compiling information. And you also made it easy for a client to say yes. You also made it easy for the advisor to influence the client to say yes with that process. So with that way, it's like, fill out this assessment. Let's get all the answers we need. Let me show you what we could do for you. Plug it into like this sheet or this calculator. And that process on the front end, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I only read the book, but like it seems like there was some magic there to make it easy for an advisor to and easy for the client to get a yes as soon as possible. And if you could get the yes as soon as possible, then the rest of the process is, all right, let's onboard them and retain them in like some sort of healthy environment. Fill me in on that. Maybe I'm missing like several pieces to it, but that's what I was intrigued by while reading the book.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Mike, I mean, in a lot of us have learned this, in different sales training and this, that, and the other, but it's identifying pain points and just really focusing in on what those pain points are, what's most important to them. I mean, it's like, the pain points are important, but also, the goals or what they want to accomplish is important. So we're just trying to identify those two things. And then we actually do a ranking system of like, once we identify what those important things are, which we basically have a list of what it's important to everybody. And we just kind of like, as we go through that meeting and identify what's the most important, then we ask them to rank what's number 1, 2, or 3, right? And like a number 1 is most important. Like it's on the front burner of the stove, right? Number 2, it's important, but it's more on the back burner, right? Number 3, it's not even on the stove. So just go through here quickly and tell us what is a number 1, a number 2, number 3. Boom. They do it. Then we go a little deeper on those ones. And like in some cases, people have a lot of ones. So then we'll say, like, let's just do an ABC on these ones, right? If you have the categories, the ones, and like most important A's, then B's, then C's. And then we really hone in on those A's. But what we're looking to do is get 2 or 3 of their most important things that they're looking to get accomplished or eliminate or get taken care of or whatever it is. And we're going deep there. And we're immediately starting to provide advice and counseling there, giving them solves right out of the gate to help them. I mean, at the end of the day, another one of my favorite books, man, I keep doing it, but it's Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni, and it's on consultative selling, right? And one of the things he teaches is like, just help them as soon as you can, right? Just like figure out what that thing is that they need help with and help them with it. And so, that's what we do. And I'm telling you, it's when you identify the pain points and the goals that are most important to that person, then at that point, you start helping them right out of the gate with it. And now your time's up. They know you can keep helping them. And there's a lot more where that came from. It's pretty hard for them not to say yes.
Well, I think it's awesome, man, and so true for what we teach in terms of just getting really curious, right, with people. And if you're going to be in sales and any sort of consultative approach, right, you're going to be positioning yourself as an expert. That's the only way to sell, in my opinion. One of the things, like last question before we kind of transition towards our big 3 questions and ask that question that's been on your mind, apparently the entire podcast about your books. But I'm just curious, like, why don't more people do this? More financial advisors? I mean, like, I look at what you said, this problem in the marketplace, and it's like, and how does someone maybe evaluate financial advisors is maybe a corollary to this question. You don't have to spend too much time on it, but it's like, there's someone like Jason Smith, and then there's the average financial advisor down the street. And, this guy's making 80 grand or 150 grand or whatever. And you're, making whatever you're making, but it's certainly not that. Like, why does this person not try a holistic approach and try to create some sort of, more comprehensive model? But then also, like, as I'm navigating the world of this, or if you're a consumer looking for finding the right person, how do you evaluate people is just an interesting question to me as well.
I mean, I think it's a couple things. I mean, that you asked there. One is like, it does take a tremendous amount of like desire to learn, multifaceted, right? Like, even though you're not the attorney or not the CPA or whatever, Like, you got to be able to understand how it all works and connect all the dots. So it does require, a fair amount of education and learning, right, to be able to do. And some people maybe are just not that, motivated, or, they're lazy, right? They just don't want to, advisors, to be able to do that. But, at the end of the day, too, I think what you got to look at is like, um, do you, at the end, what a financial advisor really is they're like a coach, right? Because at the end of the day, the players are the investment, insurance, tax, legal, and all the different people and moving parts that have to all work together to create a successful outcome. Well, at the end of the day, like, um, if that coach hasn't won championships, right? Meaning, if they're not super successful, and even financially, if they're not more successful than you are, then is that really the coach you want, right? I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself, right? Do you want the coach that has won the championship or is winning championships, or do you want the coach that you don't know? Like, so what? What kind of experience are you going to get if they're coaching your team?
It's actually a really funny analogy, and I think it's a great place for the listener to understand, and that's why I respect that your approach to financial services and wealth management, because it's like, I've done the thing, I've done it really well, and now I'm teaching the thing and teaching it really well, and you have a lot of evidence in the marketplace. So, Jason, we like to ask every quick guest 3 quick questions before we head for the exits, and I know people are going to want to stay in touch with you. First question is, what do you think the world needs most today?
I would. The first thing that pops into my head is the word empathy. Yeah, I think empathy. I think that with empathy comes patience, and I think anybody that has a pure heart and is willing to roll up their sleeves and do what it takes, can do good things, and be successful in this world in their own way, right? But at the end of the day, there has to be somebody who has empathy and therefore patience to be able to support that person.
Great answer. So the question, of course, next is, what 1 to 3 books do you recommend? And by the way, we will link to all these books, including the ones you mentioned earlier, in the show notes. So, listener, if you want to check that out, you can. But what 1 to 3 books, in addition to the ones you've mentioned, do you think everyone should check out, Jason?
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Is how my bigger business was. The whole vision behind it was a mastermind alliance, right? Like-minded people all doing, kind of unique ability. Also, what Dan Sullivan teaches, same kind of concept. And the other one that just blew my mind, was Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And again, these are add-on bonuses to the ones I already shared. The the other that comes to mind is a Patrick Lencioni book that is um, it's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I was a horrible leader. It took a lot of learning to get myself to be a good leader, and mostly organizational health wise, right? Is where I needed to work on. And, I was a very, high D on the disc profile, just do it now, and high sense of urgency, quick start Colby, and had to learn patience and empathy. And so that book helped me do that.
Well, Jason, thank you for the resource. Love those 2 classics from Napoleon Hill. I'll have to check out the other one. I don't know if I know that one. Our third question is, what does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Better than rich. Um, would be, I don't know, I guess helpful. I don't know is the best word I can come up with because, you know, like I've been blessed financially and I try to be helpful to as many people as I can. And so that's what really makes me, feel good. It's not buying a bunch of things or doing a bunch of things myself. It's it's buying things that I can share with other people, and it's doing things I can share with other people. And yeah, so at the end of the day, I guess doing good things with the money that you accumulate, right? I mean, that's what's better than being rich is doing good things with that, with those resources.
That's great. That's great, Jason. And I am just so grateful for our time that we had in Utah, walking on the mountain and doing our hike and doing our interview and getting to know you and hearing your journey and getting a chance to share my journey and our first meal that first night. And I don't know why the universe has conspired to allow us to cross paths, but I'm just so grateful that they have. And it's just you surrounding yourself around those people that you said are just a few steps ahead of you on the billionaires or whatever. For me, feeling a few steps behind on the IVF journey and also on just business and everything. It's just really beautiful to feel challenged, but also encouraged by your trajectory of growth in life and in business. So I just want to say appreciate just how you are leading your team, your business, your life, your family. And I'm sure some listeners of the podcast are going to want to stay in touch with you. So where could they go if they wanted to pick up the book of the Bucket Plan, or if they wanted to learn a little bit more about your companies, or about how to work with you, or anything that you could for them to stay in touch? What would you say?
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, the book's on Amazon, and I just actually started a podcast, Holistic Wealth and Health, a new podcast that's going to be talking about a lot of that kind of cool stuff. So you definitely can check that out. The U.S. News and World Report just came out and listed the Bucket Plan as top 10 financial books in 2023, which is unbelievable. I couldn't believe that. That was kind of a shocker. But yeah, you can pick it up on Amazon. You can check out the podcast, Holistic Wealth and Health. And also, if you're in need of, a good financial advisor, jlsmithgroup.com. You definitely can reach out to us and we'll jump on a call with you and see how we can help on that call.
It's fantastic. Well, listener, I encourage you to do so. If you're in need of a wealth manager, I would do that. jlsmith.com, you said? jlsmith.com?
jlsmithgroup.com.
jlsmithgroup.com. So jlsmithgroup.com, and also the Bucket Plan on Amazon. Jason, thank you so much again. Andrew, thank you for your questions. As always, listener, thanks for joining us. And as always, leave today better than you found it. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one.